Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon, not here with Geeky Sparkles in this video, so we're going to talk about something she doesn't care about. We're going to talk about Kraven the Hunter. Remember that movie? Does anybody remember that movie? I think everybody's forgotten it existed already, just like they've forgotten Madam Web existed, just like they forgot Morbius existed. The only reason anybody's talking about Morbius now is because Jared Leto is going to be Skeletor in the He-Man movie. They'll probably come out and everybody's going to forget exists in like a week. But I digress. Let's talk about this because the head of Sony doesn't understand why this movie was a massive failure. And weirdly enough, the Mary Sue, Rachel Leischman, who's Geeky's favorite journalist, but she's even like, how can you not understand why Spider-Man movies without Spider-Man didn't make money? Why is this so hard? So let's talk about this. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. Guys, go out to clownfishminus.com. Check out our merch. Check out our hats, our shirts, all that stuff. We got some fun stuff out there. Check that out. Go to clownfishtv.locals.com to get the same paywall content. We got a tip jar there too, guys. Greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. And I hope you had happy holidays. This comes from Collider. They got it from, I think it was LA Times or something like that, did an interview. But they're talking to the CEO of, it was the LA Times. They're talking to the CEO of Sony Pictures. Tony, is it Vinciquerra? Tony V? Tony V. We've talked about Tony V before. He's the CEO of Sony Pictures. He talked about how the reception for Kraven the Hunter surprised him. He openly mentioned how he believes the spinoff produced by his studios was a good film, while openly calling it probably the worst launch we ever had. Yeah, it was like the worst launch for any movie that Sony's put out in, ages. They said, let's touch on Madam Web for a moment. Madam Web underperformed in the theaters because the press just crucified it. It was not a bad film. It did great on Netflix. For some reason, the press decided that they didn't want us making these films out of Kraven and Madam Web, and the critics just destroyed them. They also did it with Venom, but the audience loved Venom and made Venom a massive hit. These are not terrible films. They were just destroyed by critics and the press for some reason. Actually, I've seen Morbius. It was a pretty terrible film. It was pretty awful. It was pretty boring and pretty forgettable. The Venom movies weren't great, but at least I was entertained and didn't feel like I got ripped off when I watched them, but they weren't fantastic. I was just happy to see a mostly comic book accurate Venom on screen for once, People like Venom. They like Deadpool. They like Wolverine. They like characters they know. Venom, at one point in time, was an incredibly popular Marvel character. He's still popular, but like in the 90s, Venom and Deadpool, they were insanely popular. And Venom, up until the first Venom movie, was never really done correctly in media. Well, except for the animated series. They did a good job with them. But we never actually saw a mostly comic book accurate version of Venom on screen. So people were like, this is awesome. And I think a lot of people thought that eventually we were going to get to Spider-Man, that the Venom movie was a lead-in for what everybody wants, a proper Spider-Man versus a proper Venom. Spider-Man 3 does not count. People want to see that. They want to see a proper Spider-Man versus Venom movie, and we're never going to get it because of the rights issues, apparently. I don't even know if we're going to get black-suited Spider-Man in Secret Wars. I highly doubt it, but who the hell knows? So that being said, that's Venom. Nobody gives a shit about Madam Web. Nobody gives a shit about Kraven the Hunter, unless Spider-Man is involved in that. Like, if you do the Kraven story with Spider-Man, fine. But these are like the D-list characters, right? These aren't even the B-list Spider-Man villains. These are like Kraven the Hunter. Yeah, okay. I never cared for Kraven the Hunter. I thought he was boring. If you did a Doc Ock movie or you did a Green Goblin movie or something like that, but all the A-list Spider-Man characters, they were saving for the Spider-Man movies, the proper Spider-Man movies. And it's because of the rights issue. It's just like, nobody wants to see this. Nobody wants to see these characters in movies. There's no real story to tell. Morbius, nobody gives a shit. It's like nobody cares. Most normies don't even know who the hell Morbius is. It's like, oh yeah, he was in the Spider-Man comics. Maybe you remember him from the cartoon show. He was in a couple episodes. He's a vampire dude. And it's like, Spider-Man fought vampires? It's like, yeah, Spider-Man also had 6 arms at one point, but that's a whole other thing. You know, nobody gives a shit. They don't care. So they're talking about the Mary Sue's got an article on it, shockingly enough. This is Rachel Leichman, who, you know, again, Geeky loves Rachel. Sony's thinking of changing up their approach to Spider-Man stories. What spurred that on? Maybe the consistently mediocre movies they're pushing out without a Spider-Man in them? Yeah, it makes no sense. So I'm very surprised that the Mary Sue's not like, well, people hated Madam Web because it was a woman. It's like, no, people hated Madam Web because, one, it wasn't comic book Madam Web, and two, it was boring as hell and nobody wanted to see it. As someone who did like the Spider-Man spin-off, there you go. Somebody who did like the spin-off movies, I also recognize they were not high art or even high quality superhero movies. They were chaotic, weird, and at times fun, but Sony's CEO is incorrect about the press reactions. Yeah, he just sounds he sounds like a suit. Well, we gave you Spider-Man thing. Why didn't you buy it? Is Spider-Man related? It should do half as, it doesn't have Spider-Man, so it might do half as much as Spider-Man does. You know, Spider-Man does $1 billion. This one should do $500 million. God, it's going to get destroyed no matter how good or bad it is. No, I don't think so. I think if you put a good movie out, people might go see it. I don't know. He talked about the press reaction to Madam Web. The movie is bad, as much fun as I had with it, but it was not a good movie. It had elements I loved, like Adam Scott and Uncle Ben, but the movie itself logistically made no sense. According to Tony V, he thinks that the press reactions to the movie result in the bad reaction to the film. Madam Web's audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is 55%. Well, then explain the Spider-Verse movies, which are critically acclaimed and doing very well at the box office, because they have Spider-Man in them. They've got multiple Spider-Mans, multiple Spider-Men. This is crazy. It's not snake bitten. You made bad movies. Oh my God, Rachel, you're starting to sound like one of us. You really are. So how come this is okay? I just side tangent here, and I'm not trying to channel my inner geeky, but how come this is okay? This is fine. We're allowed to hate on these movies, but if somebody like us calls out Star Wars and says, hey, the reason nobody's watching your Star Wars show is because they're sick of Disney Star Wars. The reason nobody's watching Star Trek is because they've taken too many liberties with it and they don't like the Kurtzman era Star Trek. The reason nobody's watching Doctor Who is because they lost the plot and they've attacked the audience. How come that's a fair thing to say? But you say, hey, these movies aren't great and that's why people aren't watching them. It's okay if Rachel agrees, but if you disagree, you know what I'm saying? Like, can we have this conversation now? Is it time? Has it been enough time? Is there enough water under the bridge now, Rachel? Can we say the reason nobody watched The Acolyte is because Disney Star Wars is shit and that one looked extra shitty and nobody watched it? Nobody watched Skeleton Crew either, and that one was supposedly a significant improvement, but it doesn't matter. The damage is done. Nobody went to go see Kraven because Morbius and Madam Web were dog shit. Nobody's watching Doctor Who because the Jodie Whittaker era was dog shit. It started out really strong, had very good ratings. People clearly weren't misogynists. If the show was good, they would have continued watching it. But we saw the ratings drop throughout the entire duration of her run. And then we wound up, pretty much near the bottom of the barrel with the current era. Even bringing Russell T Davies back and bringing David Tennant back, bringing Stephen Moffat back didn't save Doctor Who because people are tired of it. And especially when you've got the media out there, yourselves included at the Mary Sue, calling people bigots and Nazis and homophobes and racists and blah, 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 fake nerds and blah, 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 if they don't like a certain thing. But this one's okay because you don't like this one either. The Mary Sue, who half the staff apparently never watched Alien and didn't know what a badass Ripley was. Anyway, she says, I've often talked about how these movies are made for fans like me. I love Spider-Man so much I'll watch anything in the world for my favorite boy from Queens. But what do I think? What I do think is weird is that Sony continued to push these movies into critics' circles and that dogged on them and marketed them as movies that were on par with other superhero films. No, they were not. They were CW shows. These are mid-tier superhero movies we used to get in the early 2000s. Madam Web came out around the release of Daredevil. We'd be thriving. Putting this on critics when we've seen what a good superhero movie is like is foolish. Yeah, it is. Telling fans they have to like everything that Disney puts out that's related to Marvel is also foolish, because they're not going to like it. So yeah, this is crazy. So anyway, he doesn't understand it. He doesn't get it. It's Spider-Man adjacent. Why didn't you just buy tickets to it? Why did you not consume the slop, as they like to say? Because everybody's over it. And, the media really didn't play into it. If the movie was good and people liked it, even if it had a 35% on Rotten Tomatoes, people would still go see it. And it also came out at a really bad time too. There were a lot of really big family movies that came out, and everybody's taking their kids to go see, Moana or Wicked or Sonic, or, it had no chance. It had no chance. They should have released it in like April or something, But I'm going to wrap it up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later.